Hello, Year 12. This is Miss Wilson. I'm going to be talking through the lesson today, and this is the lesson 8. And we're going to be thinking about and focusing more specifically on how Radio 1 Breakfast Show has evolved over time, BBC Radio 1 Breakfast Show. So, what we're going to think about first of all is what have we covered so far? Because we've covered quite a bit now, haven't we, in our study of BBC Radio 1 Breakfast Show. So, you have completed an episode audit and you've looked and analysed in individual episodes. So you've got specific examples to really refer to in your responses. You've looked at listener figures and stats as well and how that's changed over time and considered the factors and why we have that change. The idea of BBC Radio 1 being a public service broadcaster. So, what does that actually mean? What is its role? What does it need to make sure it's doing? Well, it therefore needs to make sure that it's entertaining, it educates and informs and offers distinctive content as well in order to, kind of show the UK really that they are worthy enough to continue to be public service broadcaster and that bit that we should still pay fees in order to listen to it as well, which of course people have varying opinions on that, which we've also talked about. Also compare to what is on offer from commercial competitors, so other radio stations that we, such as Capital, Heart, etc. What the key differences are really. Well, we know with those, they can't rely on that funding. Therefore, they need to make sure that their listeners are up and that they do tend to, in terms of music, rely on the same artists that they know are popular, therefore are going to secure those listeners. Whereas we've said BBC Radio 1 Breakfast Show have a lot more kind of freedom with the kind of artists they can show. And of course, they do have to, and they really are responsible have responsibility to use it as a platform for new up and coming artists to kind of share their music and promote it, but also to show a range of genres as well. Which audiences are targeted and how we've looked at that younger audience, 15 to 29-year-olds, what that means, how that would kind of impact kind of content that is on the radio station, but also how that impacts who the host is and how they distribute and circulate the content, and also what the kind of issues and challenges are that the BBC Radio 1 face because of their specific audience of a younger generation. So that's the kind of things that we have been thinking about, you have been kind of commenting on throughout the lessons so far, as well as, of course, looking at the economic side of it and the impact of technology and the developments in technology and how that's kind of helped distribute across a range of platforms, which has helped to kind of combat issues when we think about the youth of today and the preferences perhaps not so much listening to radio, more in streaming their own music. So these are all the different kind of things that we've been thinking about, all the different kind of notes you've got down for each of these things. You've got all the information there now, you've got all the knowledge there. What we need to move on to think about now is how we're going to apply that knowledge and these ideas, of course, to a piece of writing and to writing a response to a question. So that's what we're going to be focusing on over the next couple of lessons, looking at questions, looking at exactly what they're asking us, what we need, what information is really suitable for the questions that we are being asked as well, and just carefully picking that information out. So before we do that though, I want us to kind of think about, and I want you to read an article to start this off, thinking about evolving media itself and the fact that BBC Radio 1 Breakfast Show has evolved from the beginning. And you can see that quite clearly from the change in presenter across the years and the reasons for the changes in presenters and the different things that those different presenters actually brought to the show as well. So what I would like you to do over the next sort of 10-15 minutes is to read this article, and I want you to sum up really in just a few words for each presenter it mentions how this kind of reflects the evolution of the show. What are they doing the show? What are they identifying? And how are they making sure that they appeal to their audience through the types of hosts and presenters that they have had across the years? So I would just like you to pause this clip for now, please, and I would like you to crack on with that task. So give yourself a good 10 to 15 minutes to do that, please. Okay, hopefully you've managed to complete that task. And kind of things that you've possibly been able to identify there is that with the presenters, it's really interesting because what BBC Radio 1 seem to be doing is recognizing the times for change. Understanding, for example, it kind of mentions how that pop culture shifts between genre every kind of so many years, and that the host that we have presenting the show, their personality, their characteristics, they need to kind of lend itself well to the kind of genre that is popular in pop culture at that moment as well. And you've got from presenters such as Blackburn to Evans, Miles, Grimshaw, all the way through to Greg James, who obviously we're looking at the moment. It's the idea that each of those have kind of brought something to that moment, that pop culture moment that was valued, whether it was, sort of humor and pranks, which of course helps target that younger audience as well. So hopefully that's given you a bit of an insight of how BBC Radio 1 Breakfast Show has evolved over time, specifically with presenters and hosts, some of which were more successful than others, of course, for various different reasons. And now, of course, we have Greg James, who is presenting it. And along with him, we did have a rise in listeners, didn't we? And that's kind of definitely been noted before. Mainly, a lot of that people think is down to his interaction with audience and how he uses social media as well. Because, of course, we're in an age now where social media is widely used by everyone. So the fact that we have a presenter and a host who is recognizing that, as the BBC as a whole is, and using that kind of suggests that we have a presenter again, an example of presenter who is having to identify the times and the audience and how they're going to kind of create that connection with the audience there. Okay, guys, so what we're going to think about now is the idea of this part of the course, of course, is all about evolving media, how it has changed over time. We looked at how the gaming industry has changed over time. We've looked at how the film industry has changed over time. And of course, now we really need to think about that with radio as well, how it has changed, specifically, of course, BBC Radio 1. And this is the kind of thing that you'll need to be considering and talking about when you are responding to questions as well, of course. So what I would like you to think about now then, and this is your next task for the day, this is a writing task. I would like you to write a couple of paragraphs, please, just about what is unique about how Radio 1 Breakfast Show has evolved. I want you to start to consider about how you kind of write about this, how you would explain this in a paragraph or so. So I've kind of given you some hints here on the screen as to the kind of things you can think about. So think about how the way its audience use its product evolved as well. Obviously, identifying who the audience is really, really important. The fact that the audience is 15 to 29-year-olds, a proportion of people who are less likely to listen to the radio because of all the streaming sites that we have now, etc. How has the radio show evolved in order to identify that challenge and overcome it as well? think about the way it produces and distributes and circulates its product. How has that changed over time? You know, the political climate, how is that affecting the program? Remember now we do have, and we looked at kind of that newspaper article from the Sun about challenging the fact that we are paying these fees for the show, amongst other things. And you know, why question why we're actually doing that. Is it something we should be doing, or should it be privatized now? Which is really quite interesting. So think about how they obviously have to recognize and identify that there's this kind of conversation going on about whether or not people should be paying the fees. So what are they doing in order to try and kind of reassure people almost? What do they need to make sure they are doing? Think about then which historical factors are important as well. Okay, historical factors, and think about in terms of the presenters, what's happened in the past with presenters, what do we know they have done to ensure that, you know, they are more successful. So I just want you really to reflect on kind of everything you've done. Look at your notes as well, and I just want you to produce a paragraph or two, really explaining, you know, how they have evolved, what they have done, BBC Radio 1 breakfast show, in order to make sure they have evolved over time. So I just want you to pause this clip, please, and give that a go. Okay, hopefully you've given that a good go, guys. So we're now going to move on to the last task of the lesson today. And that is looking at a question itself. So what we're going to be moving on to looking at now is we've got all the knowledge, all the information. You've got your specific examples from the episodes that you've listened to use as kind of evidence as well in your response, which is really, really important. Now we need to think about how we're going to apply that to a question. So just a little run through and a reminder of the style of questions that you could get in an exam about BBC Radio 1. So it is worth 15 marks, so you'd be expected to spend around 20 to 25 minutes on it, writing about it. And this is just an example of a question. Explain why popular music radio programmes struggle to gain recognition as public service broadcasting. Refer to the BBC Radio 1 breakfast show to support your answer. So again, it's asking you quite a broad question about the industry, but asking you to talk about the industry as a whole, as we do with that macro, and then specifically kind of zoom in on Radio 1 breakfast show to support the answer. But it also says you need to talk about political, cultural, and economic context. So it's really important that we bring all of that information in, what we know about the culture of radio at the minute, how people are responding to that. In politics, what are we saying about whether or not we should be paying our sort of licenses, the license fee for this, etc. So I just want you now to think about, on a scale of 1 to 5, how confident you would be to answer this specific question. So if you just pause this recording for a second and really kind of consider how confident you think you'd be in answering this. Okay, so what I'd like you to do for the kind of last thing for the lesson, which is going to set you up quite nice for next lesson, is I want you to now consider you've got the question in front of you. You now need to think about what is going to be the relevant information that you're going to need to use to answer this question. That's your first step. So what I would like you to think about, and remember, you do need to consider not only the idea of gaining recognition as a public service broadcasting, but also about the cultural, political, and economic factors as well. So all I'd like you to do for this last task today, guys, and I want you to spend about 10 minutes on this, is to just put in which information, bullet point information that you think is going to be really important to draw upon in a response to this question. Okay, thank you very much for listening today, guys. As I say, please make sure you get this last task done, as it will help you. We'll be referring to this next lesson. Okay, thank you very much.